I had the camera on, but it was on mute. So that's okay though. What's up, everybody? That was probably the worst intro I've ever done. Because I didn't really. They're just sitting there like looking like, wait, they're talking right now. They don't hear anything. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes. Hello, 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 hello. Yeah, that was a riveting. That was supposed to be the intro, like the green screen area, guys, but I'm an idiot, so I screwed it up because I'm not used to doing actual live streams with other people. So, welcome, Gamer from Mars and his crew, who put together the 4-part Chris Chan documentary. You guys can introduce yourselves, and then we could get into the friggin' insanity.
Hello, everyone. I'll start off. My name is Ardem, otherwise known as the Gamer from Mars. I've been on YouTube for 12 years, and over the past 2.5 years, I've been working on a 5-hour-long docu-series about Chris Chan with my 2 other guests on the show today.
I'm Jack, Class Act Jack on YouTube. I am the writer of parts 2 through 4 of the Chris Chan conspiracy series.
Oh, you're a writer from 2 through 4. Who did the first part? Who did
that was another writer named Bedhead Bernie, who did the part 1.
He quit because it was too much.
Which I don't blame him. I picked up that torch though.
When you first off, how the hell did you even get to the point where you could meet Chris Chan and interview them? That's the $1 million question of it, because I know that as weird as Chris Chan is, and he'll explain everything about himself to dangerous degrees on the internet, they're very opaque too.
So,
what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, also, we have Slacker here, the editor of the entire series.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, bless you.
I didn't edit the real life footage, but I edited everything else. So I edited pretty much the entire 5-hour runtime of the documentary.
I can't even imagine. As a person who knows what it's like to edit, I can't even imagine how much that must have been, especially with how much info there was.
It wasn't even just like the actual editing process of it. It was just having to sift through so much like horrendous shit to get. Sorry, you're fine with cursing on here?
My streams, are you kidding? Yes, I'm fine.
All right, yeah. I don't know, some people are pretty particular about that, but yeah, I was mainly having to sort through like all of the disgusting, horrendous shit. Like, I've seen things that I can't unsee, if that makes sense.
Oh,
I've seen some of them too, so I could imagine. I have unfortunately seen the video where Chris Chan gets it on with a blow-up doll.
Yep, of which there are multiple.
Oh, I did. Oh God, there's multiple.
Oh, there's so much out there. So a lot of it's very hard to find. There is a clip of Chris taking a shower, and we were not able to find the video. We could only find screenshots of it. We did not use any of them in the documentary, of course, but yeah. Actually, a funny story about that. We were looking to see if this video existed anywhere, and I found the screenshots deep within the Quickie, the Chris Chan Wikipedia website, and I was going to send them to Slacker, and I accidentally sent them to somebody else. The person in the shower.
Oh no!
And then they're like, "What the hell?"
No!
They were like, "What the hell is this?" And then I deleted real fast. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, that was."
I accidentally sent a Sonichu panel from one of the comics to my roommate by accident, because I meant to send it to you because I thought it was funny, and then my roommate came into my room and was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It was really bad.
Yeah,
but you know what?
If people were watching, if someone like didn't understand Chris Chan, which there is a lot of people that don't, and so what you were putting together, they probably think you were putting together a really horrific porn. You know, like there's just so much weird shit about him that if you don't understand the craziness of Chris Chan, you wouldn't get it anyway. So it's incredible. How the hell did you get an interview with Chris Chan? Because they're tough to get interviews with.
So that's an interesting story. It goes all the way back to 2019. We were working on a Chris Chan documentary, and starting in the summer, we started discussing the project, the preliminary aspects of it, and I knew that I wanted exclusive Chris Chan footage. If I was going to go into this rabbit hole and put this much work into it, I needed my own exclusive access of some sort to supplement just the story itself. So we were originally doing some stuff, and eventually we got in touch with Kopitz, who was seen in the documentary, and he knows Chris Chan in person. Apparently, as the story goes, he went to Chris Chan's house one day and provided some fan art of Sonic Chew to Christine, and they became friends in real life, bizarrely enough. So I reached out to Kopitz and I said, "Hey, can I meet Chris Chan in real life? I would love to shoot a little interview with them, spend a couple days down there." And Kopitz told me, "Well, actually, I'm in town for the next few days because it was New Year's Eve time and he was out of school and back home in Ruckersville area. So I got a buddy of mine to come down. We brought a camera that I bought the day before, and we just drove down to Virginia and just improv'd a weekend with Chris Chan. And then after we got home, I had to decide on what to do with it, and that's when it kind of morphed into this massive project of a 5-hour-long docu-series."
Did you get anything in terms of the history of Chris Chan from Chris Chan themselves, or was that just like a wall when you went there? Because I saw it didn't seem like there was any engagement in terms of, I mean, they were showing you stuff and playing the Switch and their crazy ass game that they put together, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. Was there anything that you were like, oh, okay, like now I get it from Chris Chan, or was that just you were there and they were in their own fantasy world? That's what it seems like anyway.
Yes, that's the issue with interviewing Chris Chan in person. Is unlike other documentaries where you sit down with a person and ask them questions and then they respond and then you ask more questions about it and you try to get new information off them. I quickly realized, talking to Christine, that Christine's entire memory of their life and their trolling history is just a reiteration of Geno documentaries. Christine watches Geno documentaries and then recites what she saw on Geno Samuel's channel as like what her life was. So you ask her, what was the story with Liquid Chris? And it was just kind of just a basic summary of it as she saw on Geno. That's at least what I got out of it. So at that point I realized, okay, interview's not going to work. We're just going to go into town with Christine, hang around, play some video games, and then at the end of the day we decided to bookend each of the 4 parts with just a little slice of life with Chris Chan in person.
What was, because their house was always notorious for being, well, let's put it nicely, disgusting. When you walked in there, it didn't seem the worst I've ever seen it, at least from video. What was it like going in there though? Like, yeah,
it honestly wasn't that bad. It slightly smelled like animal urine, dog urine, I believed. So that wasn't the best, but in terms of Christine's room, it was fairly tidy. Even that cluttered playroom with all the toys and stuff in it, it wasn't dirty or filthy. It was just very cluttered. It was definitely a lot worse before the fire happened. They never got back to the level of hoarding that they had prior to the house going up in a blaze.
Here's the $1 million question though. How long did they know until you were coming?
I think it was 2 days before, 3 days before.
That's it. Okay. So the reason I said that was that maybe they had a lot of time to prepare for you to come, and maybe that's why it wasn't that horrendous. Okay.
I don't know if Chris Chan would be interested in that, to be honest.
Chris Chan would, I doubt, would have changed anything.
Good
or cleaned
point.
The house for us coming there. It was just, hey, Chris, some people are. Chris seemed to be excited that we were there because we were people to play his card game with and play Switch with. And the one day he came back and he had a Dungeons and Dragons kit and he wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons with us. He said she always wanted to. excuse me for the misgendering. It gets very confusing because I'm always around the timeline of.
No,
where...
I do that too, because especially when you know them as male, I do that with Jim Sterling, because I've known Jim Sterling for 7 fucking years as Jim. So like sometimes I'll talk about them and I go back and forth between genders. So I do the same thing.
The biggest problem is we are so used to looking into Chris Chan's past and the male side of the timeline that having to switch between he and she depending on where you're at in the story, it's just it becomes a mess to keep track of. But I'm getting a little off topic. We get Dungeons and Dragons. Christine brings it home. I guess she stopped at Target to get it or something, and she's opening up. She's like, okay, yeah, let's play it. And I look at the back of the box and it says game lasts for 5 hours, and I'm like, no chance in hell am I staying here for 5 hours to play Dungeons and Dragons. I sat through and played 2 hours of the card game, not doing that. So we came up with some sort of excuse saying, oh, I got to get back to the hotel before it gets dark or something. And that was the end of that day. So yeah, we got out of having to play Dungeons and Dragons with Chris Chan.
Now, the mom initially was still there when you were out there, right?
Yeah, that little clip that we show in the documentary of Barbara in the doorway in the back, that's the only time I ever saw Barbara while we were there.
And did she seem like she was all there? Did you have any engagement with her at all, or?
That little segment that you see in the documentary where she apologizes for the dogs barking is the only contact we had with Barbara in any way. We didn't see her around, and I wasn't going to pry around the house.
Yes.
It was kind of a thing where you get into the house and it's like a bi-level ranch where one side it goes up a flight of stairs for the main living area, and then you go down, and the down is where Chris Chan's room and the playroom is. So every time we went to the house, we just took the left and was in Chris Chan's side of the house. So I didn't want to pry and go up there. Plus there was a gate to make sure the dogs didn't get down and get out of the house. So it was kind of restricted for us to get up there. So yeah, never saw Barbara besides that one little instance.
So you initially, when you were doing the documentary, all of the stuff that happened with his mom, which I still can't wrap my head around, didn't happen yet. How far along were you at the time in the documentary? I put air quotes because you didn't know that was going to happen. Like, what did you do when that all went down? Because you were probably thinking, okay, we're done with this, we got it. That probably took you for a curve.
Yeah, we were probably 75% done, 80% done with the project by that point. We were ready to go to wrap it up. That it made us kind of scramble to reevaluate what the project was going to be. And in a weird way, it did give us a conclusion to the story and a way to end it. Because after the story came out of Chris Chan did that to his mother to heal them, I was like, wait a minute. I went back into the footage, and then in the footage, Christine tells me, oh yeah, I've healed my mother through touch. She believes in my powers. And then that's when she puts her hand on my shoulder. And then I was like, her putting her hand on my shoulder, we just cut to black there and let the credits roll. And that's the end of the documentary. I'm like, we have an ending.
Yeah, in the original draft, the script draft for the last part, it doesn't really end. It just kind of stopped, you know. It just is like, who knows what'll happen with Chris Chan? Maybe she'll get better. And then this happened, and it's like, we have an ending now. The story has a conclusion.
Yeah, so we were able to tie that in for the last segment, and also we should have a little visual where we kind of equate Chris Chan sitting in a prison cell with Chris Chan sitting locked in a closet as a child, which is kind of the start of his problems, and it all went downhill from there. So we it kind of was a perfect circle. Starts off locked in a closet, ends the story locked in a prison cell. I think it was kind of poetic in a way, and tragically.
I said a whole bunch of times when I was live streaming your documentary that why didn't the parents step in? You found out why, because they were insane themselves. But it was like the perfect petri dish for someone like Chris Chan to go down the rabbit hole they went down. But not only did they not step in, you told me before they essentially enabled him to the point where they were like Chris Chan's dating services parents. Tell me what you were saying before about their answering machine.
Yeah, we got access to some Chris Chan troll recordings back in the day. They might be public. Someone sent them to us, but it was kind of interesting stuff from the golden age of the trolling 15 years ago. And they were calling up the Chandler's house, and Chris Chan left a message for the answering machine saying, "Hello, this is the Chandler residence. If you want to talk to me, here's this, do this. But if you're a boyfriend-free girl, call up my dad or speak to my dad to vet yourself with them. And if my dad okays it, then you could get in touch with me." That was the gist of it.
So it's confirmed, ladies, and remember where I kept saying it during the live stream that it's almost like his parents are enabling him. At the time, at least, anyway, they were. I mean, there is that one clip that was really dark and frightening to me where he's writing a letter to one of the girls that he thought in his fantasy world that he was in a relationship with, where he's like, "Oh, if I didn't write these comics, I would have done something worse."
Megan, yeah.
That he was basically saying that he would have like raped her or something.
Yeah.
That was like, I was like, holy shit, like this is not funny anymore, you know?
Yeah, if you look at her response to that email, we didn't include it because there's so much you have to cut out of this story. But she responds like, "What do you mean? You're gonna rape me?" Like she actually responds like that,
Well,
just
yeah.
disgusted. It's absolute insanity. To add to the point of the parents knowing about it and being involved, it also goes back to the story of Shigeru Miyamoto. They pretend to be the creator of the Mario Brothers talking to Chris Chan about making a Sonic Chew game. And the parents are sending messages back and forth with Shigeru Miyamoto talking about how they're business savvy and how like trying to negotiate a deal on behalf of Chris.
Yeah.
So it's like the mother, Barbara, especially now, she's just kind of mentally out of it from what I could tell for the most part. But
she
back
absolutely
then,
has dementia, yeah.
very dysfunctional situation. A lot of stories of her past relationships, it appears, with Chris's half-brother. He's voiced some stuff of the dysfunction in his childhood with her. And also Bob was in his 70s. He just was an old man, didn't understand any of this, just seemed to go with the flow. It just a perfect storm in every regard. When Chris Chan was around on the internet, when it was the golden age of 4chan trolling and Something Awful forums and all that stuff, and the parents just kind of being older, not fully with it, a bit crazy themselves, Chris Chan being very gullible and naive, but also smart at the same time. That's another interesting aspect to it, is there's to get somebody like Chris Chan, they have to be gullible and believe stuff that you could convince them of crazy things, but also at the same time, they have to be competent enough where they could make YouTube videos, design websites. That's a very unusual combination. Most people, if they're that gullible, they don't have the mental capacity to do that other stuff. But in the case of Chris Chan, he did.
Yeah, that was the thing that surprised me when I was watching your documentary, was when he drove to either cross state or to another state.
Yeah, he drove to
Ohio.
Cleveland.
Yeah,
Ohio,
that was
yeah.
crazy. I'm thinking like, I don't even know if they could, wipe their own ass, and here they are driving across state, and that was surprising, and it was also scary.
I couldn't make it to Ohio without GPS, so I...
There was somebody in the comments of that video I saw who pointed out something that I actually didn't know about. That the part of Cleveland they sent him to was East Cleveland, which is apparently like one of the worst ghettos in America at the time.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, Chris Chan also got Sonic on the way there. Whether that was intentional on Chris Chan's part.
Oh, it definitely was.
I always thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it was absolutely. Chris was just like, "Oh, Sonic, like the hedgehog."
I mean, Sonic does have some good fries, so I mean, I'll say that much.
I've had them once before, and I thought they were shit, but of course, I'm sure Chris Chan did that purposely. I think that's the thing that kind of, for trolls, that made him like a dream come true, because you could pretty much mold him to do whatever the hell you wanted Chris Chan to do. Even when they transitioned, and then they got crazier later on, because I think that because Bob wasn't there to limit I guess, what was done, and especially because Chris Chan's mom was going through the cognitive decline, it became. But when Chris Chan did what they did to the mother, was there anything else that came out about it? That, like, was there, like, that troll, that girl that did all this? Was that all confirmed? Because at first I always tried to say it was alleged, because it was just it's a heinous thing, and if it was wrong, if it was inaccurate, I didn't want to put that out there. But was that all true about her, that troll?
Everything we covered in the documentary was confirmed true. There's a lot of gray area in it. Isabella Loretta Jenke is a rabbit hole in and of itself.
You can make a video just on her, yeah.
Turkey Tom made a very good video about her. I'd
Probably
recommend
the
anyone
best
watching.
video on the topic as well.
We actually took his script and condensed it down for our little section about her. But yeah, just so there's even more stuff that we didn't even cover in the documentary about what she did to animals. And there's stories about her slipping estrogen into people's drinks to make them transition without them knowing, animal abuse. Yes.
Yeah, she is evil.
There's footage of her like molesting like her roommate. It's really sickening shit.
Allegedly, it's one of,
allegedly.
Let's do allegedly for all this stuff. Because,
allegedly, yeah.
And then there's
there's video proof of it, but yeah, I guess allegedly.
You still have to say allegedly.
Then it appears she released some, when it first went down, released some sort of text messages between her and Chris Chan, where Chris Chan's talking about like doing very graphic BDSM stuff with their mother, but that turned out to be probably a fake, like a Photoshop that she did.
I hope to God so.
So it's one of those things where getting the fact from fiction is very difficult. And also she got in touch with a few people after the fact, YouTubers, who just believed what she said, and they essentially were her minions to spout like lies that help benefit her and make her look at like the victim in all this. So it's just very crazy story in and of itself. I didn't want to go too deep into it because it distracted from the point of the greater picture of things and how that was going to be the conclusion of the tale. But yeah, Isabella Loretta Jenke, everything we mentioned in the video, that's legit. There's so much crazy stuff that she and her friends at that college did to get Kiwi Farms after them, to the point where Isabella, I believe she was banned from her college for 2 years. The trolls were able to make that happen.
That's it. Like, I guess they have to confirm other stuff and innocent until proven guilty. But she's a monster if she ended up doing as much as we think that she did.
So my understanding is that Kiwi Farms kept on messaging the school. The school didn't seem to be doing anything about it. But then a girl that attended the school came forward and said, I'm one of her victims. And then at that point, the school took it seriously. And they evaluated that situation as the means to come up with a punishment for her. And also her parents are very wealthy. Her mom's,
I've heard that.
Her mom's a pilot, I believe. Her dad, did he work for the CIA or something?
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Allegedly, I've heard that too.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people call her a Fed, is because they have the assumption that that has something to do. I don't think that has any relevance to do with anything.
I don't think the feds care about Christian.
No, I really don't.
There's Cash App history. Maybe it was Cash App or Venmo, one of those where her mom just kept on sending her hundreds of dollars whenever she wanted something. Like they just spoiled her, gave her money, just some spoiled rich girl that was just... I honestly still don't quite understand that situation, but just like everything else in the Chris Chan lore, very dysfunctional.
And she was like the worst thing that could have happened to him, because she was willing to take it to that level, and they were the perfect, malleable, impressionable person that they could have manipulated. I think that's the scariest thing about it. It was like the perfect storm that was unfortunate to happen.
I mean, every single person that got in touch with Chris Chan, it was just unfortunate after unfortunate after unfortunate. I will say that besides Blue Spike, who was the worst troll of the golden era of the Chris Chan trolling, the original trolls, they kind of backed down, especially when the house fire happened. All the original trolls and anyone that'd been following Christine's life for so long, they backed away and actually started trying to help Christine, such as Null and the people on Kiwi Farms. They were very protective about Christine. But what ended up happening was there was a new generation of trolls that came up. It appeared that they were all influenced by watching the Gino documentary, where I'm not saying Gino encouraged any of this, of course not, but they learned about Chris Chan through the Gino doc, because Chris Chan was kind of old news, old internet on wikis and stuff, kind of hard to cipher through, and Gino made a palatable video series where this younger group was able to delve into it, and that's where I believe Isabella Loretta Jenke and the Idea guys came from.
Yeah, obviously not his fault.
No, not his fault.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
That was the catalyst for a new generation of trolls to learn about Chris Chan and say, "Hey, I'm going to take a crack at this. I want to be in the Gino doc." I mean, that's probably what their end game was.
The trolls, what was amazing with your documentary is that Chris Chan, I've never seen dedicated trolls eventually feel bad for a person, and they did for Chris Chan. Like, if you look at Wings of Redemption or DSP, you know, they don't care. But I think it was so, I guess, pathetic towards the end, especially after Chris Chan's dad died, that to see like the trolls like band together and actually want to help Chris Chan was pretty amazing. I've never seen that before in any community.
They had to realize it's gone too far. Like, this, Chris has suffered enough. We need to help a little bit.
Yeah, because there was no, he wasn't hindered in any way. Even when both the parents were still around, even before Chris Chan transitioned and he was still looking for a boyfriend-free girl, like, there was nothing to stop him. And I guess they realized that, like, yeah, this could get as out of control as we wanted to. And how, I'm sure they also thought that maybe they would be legally liable if they kept pushing it too. So I think that's why some people stopped as well.
Yeah, how far could you go with that? They got everything out of it, and it just became really sad.
It's just not funny anymore.
Yeah, in the words of Morrissey, this joke isn't funny anymore. It's one of those things where you look at the documentary and it's just a roller coaster down. It keeps on going down. It levels off sometimes of, oh, this was really bad. The trolls back down. Chris Chan says they're leaving the internet. Then it happens again, and then it's like, this time Chris Chan's going to learn his lesson. Happens again this time, and that happens like 10 times, where we end a segment of the doc where we say Chris Chan seemed to be leaving the internet, learned his lesson, go lick his wounds, and not do it again, and then he does it again. It's absolute insanity. It really
How much work? Because even with it as digestible as you possibly could have made it, how painful was it compiling all of that information together? It had to have been an absolute nightmare, because there was so much, and then you had to sort through what was actually true or not.
The hardest part was just deciding what should go in. You know, it's just like, what's relevant to the full story, because there's so many things that are just like, this troll just kind of happened. There's no point in bringing this up, or it's like this like an entire whole events in Chris's life that just kind of are just the same thing again. Even stuff that did make it into the documentary, like the Jackie Romy, what was her name? Jackie, whatever her name was, like the last big catfish gal pal. There were so
many of them. I don't even know how the hell you could remember any of them.
No, it was Jackie. She was the one whose boyfriend was Lars. Who liked the boats?
The black man, yeah.
Yeah, and that one.
How's it going, Jive Turkey?
Yeah,
as Chris said.
And that actually happened. Speaking of dating, that actually happened where there was a guy who showed up in a pickle suit to pretend to take the girl. Yeah. I was like, how is that real? I'm sorry, I didn't.
That one, I feel like it was mean, but I kind of gotta say that took effort. You gotta admit, that took planning, that took effort. You had to buy props for that one.
Yeah, and see, those are the trolls that I think are like the best kind of trolls, like Liquid Chris, where it's like they're not really
malicious,
harming Chris Chan. You know, they're not stealing money from Chris Chan. They're just
They're turning his life into an ARG.
Yeah,
almost.
which, you know, at the end of the day, Chris kind of believed it. And to what extent Chris thought everything was real is kind of like debatable.
Yeah.
You know, we can kind of sit here and talk about like, but I mean, there has to be at some point certain gal pals that we know were fake all along, but Chris still believes are real to this very day. You know, there's a lot of shit that Chris Chan thought was real that we still don't know if she believes is real or not.
Yeah, that I always wondered that about Chris, is did he actually believe it, or did he want to believe it? Those are two totally different things, you know.
The interesting thing, though, is they're two different things, but at some point they seem to merge together with Chris Chan, where it goes down to there was clearly abuse in Chris Chan's childhood, stuff that we don't even know about. I'm fairly confident of that. I have a few little reasons for believing it. It comes down to the stories just don't really add up a lot of the time. The babysitter locked me in a closet for a couple hours. Now I don't speak for 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
You get locked in a closet for a couple hours and then you don't speak. You become a mute like that. I'm not a psychologist, but that doesn't sound 100% right. Was there something else there that we don't know about? There was another point where Chris had to leave. The family left their house because the neighbors were spreading nasty rumors about them. So they moved into an apartment. You leave your house because the neighbors are spreading rumors about you.
Everyone has shithead neighbors. Yeah, that doesn't add up.
So the principal of the school made him sit on his lap. That's like the extent of it. It's just like very strange things that, looking into it, just didn't fully add up. There's an extra piece to this puzzle.
And like there was like a couple more clues that kind of pop up in Chris's life, because everything in Chris's life is foreshadowed. There was that one clip we showed in the documentary, just like as an in-between segments of Chris just talking to the camera, being like, I hate the homos. I actually do have a story about that, but I won't go into detail because if I did, you guys would have a field day. And it's like, is there something there? Did he get...
Also, jumping in, Jenkin Jinkies, he's pretending to be a troll, and he comes up with this elaborate backstory for his made-up character, where he was molested as a little kid at a club or something, or at a summer camp.
Is that the story that you said, like, that was supposedly fake, but Chris Chan went into a lot of detail with it?
Yeah,
it's
like,
we went into
detail to the point where I didn't feel sickening detail to the point where
it's probably something that happened.
Yeah, and personally, I didn't even feel comfortable reading it. You know, I didn't even go on the quickie page for it because I was just, you know, I really didn't want to see it, because at the end of the day, it's like this really disturbing story about getting raped at a summer camp, which, you know, it's just a very like out of left field thing to talk about.
It's eyebrow raising.
No trolls coerced him into doing it either. That was just, I'm gonna pretend to be a troll and I'm gonna come up with a backstory for myself, and that was the backstory Chris Chan independently came up with for their troll character to make it more believable.
It kind of ties into what we're talking about. Now, there's a lot of people in the community and in the trans community that feel that Chris Chan actually isn't transgender. They were just looking to become transgender to try to get with women. That's the thing I keep on hearing. Then I saw a part of your documentary where it was like, I don't know. Maybe Chris Chan always kind of thought that way, but he was afraid to because of his parents. What do you think? Do you think that was... Is Chris Chan truly transgender, or was there some other motive behind it?
Well, I can also speak on this too. In addition, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off or anything like that. But as somebody who is part of that community, like I would consider myself to be a part of the LGBT community. So it's like a lot of it has to do with a lot of the reasoning. Yes, whenever you look into it, you're like, okay, well, Chris did this and that, throughout the entire documentary, you kind of see these like little tidbits kind of poking through like the tom girl phase or the tomboy phase, and all of this other stuff. But then you kind of look at it and see like, well, Chris Chan did do all of these things that were arguably like indicative of them being trans, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I'm not going to invalidate Christine's gender or anything like that. I usually just refer to Christine as her just because it's like a new era. That's how I view it personally. Yeah. I just feel like it's inaccurate at this point to call Chris Chan Chris, because it just feels like two different people almost. But for that, it's kind of like, you know, there have been occasions where Chris Chan has said that the only reason that they became transgender in their own Chris Chan way was to, you know, pick up like lesbians and stuff like that. There's a lot of weird stuff where Chris Chan in the past has said disparaging things about trans people and said
a bunch of times.
A lot of times. Even like a year before Chris Chan came out as transgender, there was Jack Thaddeus, which the trolls said that they were trans, but obviously that was just kind of like a meme that the trolls kind of pulled to fool Chris into saying bigoted shit. But it worked. And, you know, Chris Chan said, well, I think transgender people are disgusting and I'm proud to be a man. And I'll never become trans because that's disgusting. You know, there's just a bunch of shit that is just indicative of like, I don't know. It's a very hard situation because of how like genuinely like mentally ill Chris is. But at the same time, that's not necessarily like a reason for somebody to invalidate their trans identity. It's just that Chris Chan in particular is an interesting case because of how bad those delusions really were.
I wonder though too if Chris Chan always felt that they were transgender, but yeah, I have a feeling that this is just a feeling and it's speculation. I don't know Chris Chan's parents when they were both alive and cognitively they were there, but that he was kind of parroting the stuff that he was learning, because he was also pretty racist too, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Chris Chan was everything. Racist,
homophobic, big time.
You know, anti-Semitic at times. Just, I don't even think like his parents said anything about anti-Semitism. I think he just saw that online once. And he probably saw jokes on Family Guy and The Simpsons.
No, yeah, South Park definitely made him.
Yes. So that's where I would imagine the anti-Semitism came from. He was obsessed with adult cartoons, just those sort of things. I've just thought of this connection now, actually, of he was raised in this very conservative family in a lot of ways where he went to church every week with his dad, at least. It seems like Barbara didn't go, from what I could tell, for the most part. But then on the other hand, they're letting him buy stuff from AdamandEve.com, blow up dolls and all this other stuff.
His parents?
I mean, they watched him buy this stuff. I'm sure that they saw Adam and Eve packages come into the mail.
Oh God.
They must have known.
Yeah, there's no way that they didn't, because it was expensive. Like eventually Chris Chan listed their entire porn collection and for $1,000 on Craigslist. And you know, you think about it like, oh wow, that's like way overpriced. But if you like look at the insane quantity of like porn DVDs, it's the $1,000 price tag probably wasn't even too far off. Just spending an insane amount on porn, and like it was all weird shit too, and like sex toys and stuff. It's just wild that how much Chris got away with.
I said this during the stream, and it's still imagine being the person who answers that Craigslist or Facebook or whatever it was. Yeah, I'm here for all of your used porn that you have.
I'm sure plenty of trolls responded exactly with that.
And now you're making me think too. Like, imagine the Amazon boxes or the Adam and Eve boxes. Oh, hey mom, that's just my blow up doll. I'm about to like. It's so weird. It's so unhealthy. I can't. Like, could you imagine just like a big blow-up doll box comes in and the dad?
Well, to be fair, I would imagine that the blow-up doll is very small before you blow it up when it comes in the mail.
But he got multiple things from there. Obviously, he had a whole porn collection, so I'm sure.
The parents came into his room at points and saw that doll sitting there. I just, it wasn't like he was deflating it each time.
I hope.
In between using it, it's just it. I'm at a loss for words when I get too deep into this, because the story is more insane than every single other lolcow on Kiwi Farms combined in a lot of ways. And
it's so sad too, because look how it ended, and it could have been stopped if someone stepped in before, like even back when he was doing the boyfriend free girl video. Or even when Bob came in, that's the infamous one. I know we keep talking about it, when he's like, you need to get all those videos off. Like, you see that your son at the time is doing all of this shit, and it's just like, oh, okay, if you're a girl calling for him, call my phone instead. Like that alone is insane, and it just, when you look at Chris, what the scary thing about him too is that it was the perfect recipe, beyond the parents enabling him, for him to do this, because he had the autism. On top of that, he was mentally ill. And on top of that, he wasn't working and his parents weren't stopping him. So he had all the time in the world to live in this sick fantasy that just kept getting worse and worse. And you have more people trolling him because they know they could do whatever the hell they want to, essentially.
Yeah. From a very young age, Chris Chan escaped life through video games and toys and just Sonic the Hedgehog and Pokemon. He just delved right into that, to focus on that, to ignore everything else in his life. And when the trolls came in, he did the same thing with them, where they gave him a storyline, just like Saturday morning cartoons. They were the bad guys, they were the saving the damsel in distress, and he bought into it. And when you see those videos of the hoarding situation in that house, where one of the trolls tells him to make a pot of spaghetti, make spaghetti for a video. The kitchen was so cluttered he couldn't make a pot of spaghetti, so he mined it out in his room. It's so sad on so many levels. You can't blame him for trying to use this as escapism when that's your reality on a day-to-day basis.
There was the clip that you showed, and I remember seeing it years ago, where it actually was like the trolling was at the worst. And yes, I will ask about Lord Silly Nipples. Everyone asked me to ask about Lord Silly Nipples, but
yeah, that seems to be a very popular question in the chat.
Chris Chan was going up a flight of stairs, and it's literally, there was just a path, like half the path was just stacked with shit, and he had to like crawl almost like horizontally, like you're in Tomb Raider, up the stairs to get up there. And it's just, it's sad. He must have had to go into a fantasy world to escape, and it's almost like he looked forward to the trolling because it gave him an excuse to escape.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. I think that this is not the case, but it gave him a uniqueness to his life, where his life would have just been like just a struggle day to day of being in that environment.
Especially because Chris had no job, no real friends outside of home, so he was just at home all day.
He had all the time in the world. Yeah,
he was infamous in his town. By the time he was an adult and the internet was trolling them, they were pretty notorious where they lived. For just people knew of Chris Chan as just this weird guy.
Yeah, not even necessarily as Chris Chan, just like in general, like this weird person just going around doing a bunch of weird shit in public, holding up attraction signs.
Now, after what they did to their mom, did you end up talking to anyone throughout his town? Did you end up is there any word as to, I mean, obviously it was horrific what happened, but knowing the whole circumstance, does anyone have an opinion on that, knowing exactly what happened and how Chris Chan was manipulated into doing the most horrific thing, arguably, that you can do?
The morning it came out what Chris Chan had done, I originally messaged just the group chat where everyone involved in the project was, and we were just freaking out. A crazy day. But then right after that, I messaged Kopitz, our connection with Chris Chan in real life, and I'm like, Kopitz, you see what happened? And he's like, I just woke up. What happened? And I sent him a link, and he's like, Jesus Christ. That was, I think that was his response, and he was just in absolute shock. He got in touch with Chris Chan because I was like, hey man, I'll pay you some money if you get a final interview with Christine before they're taken away in handcuffs. And he messages Christine, and Christine said, I can't do an interview now. I'm getting prepared to go to the Brony convention in Washington State. They still believed that they were going to go to that Brony convention after the story came out. I recall that Christine
That
came out
says
with
so much.
Yeah.
Christine came out with a Twitter post statement on the matter right after it was revealed, and the gist of it was telling people to mind their own business.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, come on.
It's still up, probably. That's another crazy thing, is that usually in a situation like this is, the person's social media is banned. But, all of Chris Chan's social media is still up. Like, her Twitter is still up.
I want to see if I can find the tweet.
Her Facebook is still up, for sure.
The YouTube got hacked, and they uploaded a video to it, but they didn't take it down. It was just one video went up, and it's still there.
Well, I think if they took it down, that would be sacrilege. I mean, that's a
big
part of Chris Chan history right there.
Some troll got into Christine's YouTube channel, the current one, and uploaded a video of some random dude yelling, Julie! And everyone thought, oh, this is the end. And then one video went up, from what I recall, and the channel's still there in its current state.
That says so much. I just can't get over that they were talking about the Brony convention after that came out. That shows how dangerous Chris Chan is, because they don't compute what they did.
No, they don't understand right from wrong at this point. On top of that, when Kopitz was filming some B-roll around town, I believe he was filming Christine's middle school, just to show while we're discussing it. There were some passers-by, and Kopitz is like, hey, can I do an interview with you for a documentary about a person that went to this school? And they're like, oh, Chris Chan, no. They knew exactly who he was talking about the second he asked. So, known about round town. I could only imagine what the community thinks at this point. Surprisingly, the local news really didn't cover it much. If I was a local news reporter,
I would be all over that.
It's a no-brainer. They report the story. The local news has like a little snippet about it, saying, oh, a local man was arrested for this. And then that was the end of it. And it's like, if I was a beat reporter for Ruckersville area, man, I'd be going to the courtroom, reporting on that. That would be the top story.
I mean, for Christ, Tucker Carlson reported on it.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson reported on it. Why would they talk about a local news fail? You have like major network news talking about this, like, it's not a big deal. The
funny thing about Tucker Carlson is that Tucker Carlson obviously didn't understand, or I don't know who does Tucker Carlson's research, but it was kind of embarrassing. Like, the coverage of it was so insanely short, and of course it was all just like, it wasn't even about the fact that Chris Chan fucked their mom. It was that Chris Chan was trans and was being thrown into a women's prison or something like that. And
it sounds like Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, and then he kept referring to Chris Chan as if Chris Chan's last name was Chan. So he kept saying like Mr. Chan was thrown, are we going to really throw Mr. Chan into prison with women? It was funny, but
didn't Philip DeFranco refer to
Philip
Chris Chan as Chan as well?
In fairness, Philip DeFranco did the same exact thing. So
Philip DeFranco is not terminally online.
Well, I mean, he has been on YouTube since 2006, but he knows who.
Should have a better idea of who Chris Chan is than Tucker Carlson.
Billy must know who Chris Chan is, but.
So, what do you know about where does Chris Chan go now? Like, what's going on with them legally? I don't even know. I'm actually really asking. I have no idea. So what's the hell is going to happen to Chris Chan at this point?
So the most recent updates in terms of Chris Chan in prison is Chris Chan was originally sent to a female prison. I believe they got transferred to a male prison, but this entire time they're in solitary confinement. And people
Really?
have been able to send letters back and forth with Christine in prison. And Christine essentially sees herself as a reincarnation of Jesus.
Those letters. The letters.
Says that Null is a reincarnation of Judas, and that Judas betrayed him or her. And what else? My favorite highlight from the prison letters was at one point, Christine says, "The Simpsons is to the Bible what the Family Guy is to the Quran."
And you know what? That's
Oh
true.
my
That's
God.
probably the only sane thing that Christian has ever said.
So there's these letters going about back and forth with people where it's insane ramblings for the most part, and there's not much to glean from it. As far as I could tell, they went to there was some preliminary trial hearing of some sort where Christine flipped out and said that she wanted her toys, and she said she was internet famous to the judge, and the judge told her to sit down. But besides that, it's still in limbo where they're at with the court case. They were transferred to a mental institution more recently of some sort. And on top of that, when people try to go into the courtroom for these hearings, just people from Kiwi farms that are local, they try to go in there and they won't allow them in the courtroom because I think they know that they're trolls. But technically, I think they should be allowed in the courtrooms because it's an open court. So I think it would take, like, if I lived down there, I'd probably just get a lawyer to fight my case so I could get in there and have journalist access to those hearings. But
I'm sure there's some amazing stuff going on there as she's in the courtroom. There's no way there can't be.
I'm not a lawyer, but what I would guess would be the outcome of this entire case is that Christine does some sort of plea bargain where they have to go into a halfway house of some sort where they don't get access to the internet, and that's the end of the story. But we have to wait and see. Christine's been in prison for maybe 8 months now. That there's only so much time you could do in jail for the crime that they're arrested for. So even if they do get charged with something, it'll be time served, possibly.
Yeah, credited for the time that you already served, yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be very interesting to see. I just hope that they don't have access to the internet unfettered again. That's just going to be a nightmare.
$1 million question I know that everyone wants me to ask, and I did ask before we started actually streaming. How many takes did you have to do of saying Lord Silly Nipples with a straight face? Because I know before we end, people have been asking me to ask you that.
Quite a few. There was just moments in the documentary. You have to realize it was 5 hours of voiceovers, and then it took me probably 15 hours to record them, maybe not that much, but over 10 hours to record all those. So it's all kind of a blur.
That's it, actually? I thought that would have been like 20 plus
actually,
hours. No
I don't
way.
know, Slacker, what would you say? How long was the raw footage of me, raw audio?
Had to be more.
Of me?
Yeah, how long was the
usually with the raw audio, it usually was about like
3 times
a little over twice the length as like the final audio was. So
About
for
15 hours,
like
then.
episode 3, it was like 2.5 hours. For episode 1, it was like 2 hours. So it really wasn't an insanely bad thing. One thing, but there were multiple times throughout me editing the audio where Art just lost his shit because it was just such an insane occurrence of just genuinely insane stuff happening, especially during the golden age with Liquid Chris and all that. And I laughed along too. But
I specifically in the script, and I've done this for quite a few scripts, but in the script I had a lot of opportunities to specifically put things in there that I wanted to hear Art say because I thought it would be funny. During the Ivy saga, for example, he had to he drew a comic where they had sex, and Chris put his penis on the comic and to outline it.
Oh my God! Yeah, I forgot about that.
people called it the giant penis comic, and I really wanted to hear Art say that, and he did.
Probably the parts where I was cracking up the most is where the trolls were pretending to be real people like Shigeru Miyamoto or Billy Mays, and in the script we were referring to them as if Chris Chan is actually talking to Billy Mays. Billy Mays did this, and it's like that's probably where I cracked up the most, because we're at a level of absurdity where we're just the script is playing from the delusion that Chris believes is true. And then every once in a while we have to break break it and say, and Chris Chan was broken about this, even though it wasn't real at all. And we'd have to point that out a couple times, but it just, from a writing perspective, you just have to, so you can't, people get it. So you kind of act like, oh, this is what Chris was going through. We go from his perspective. And
it made part 3 probably the most fun one to write, just because I got to approach it like a villain of the week type Saturday morning cartoon. It's like, ooh, the next evil villain has appeared in Chris's life. The new dastardly plan.
When you were writing the script, how tough was it to keep the chronology together with all of this shit just coming from 3 billion different angles?
Surprisingly not that hard. There was only because especially again during the golden age, one thing leads into the next pretty seamlessly.
Really? Okay.
Because Jack Thaddeus shows up, and then he's the one who shows Chris Liquid Chris, and so you move into Liquid Chris from there, and then that's where you get Casey, and Casey's her own kind of saga after that. So it's kind of one thing leads to the next. There's only like a couple instances where like one thing happens and then it becomes relevant to another thing that we didn't get a chance to mention yet. So you have to jump back in time and be like, oh, also this thing was happening. Okay, moving on, continue.
I also believe the trolls were very well grouped at that point. They were all working together.
It's amazing.
So it's that you had this group of trolls messing with Chris Chan, and it's like a Truman Show sort of thing, where you have a group of people running the show behind the scenes of, okay, what storyline are we going to do next, where they'd brainstorm it, and it would go out there and they'd all decide on what the new line is. Okay, this is the girl that Chris Chan's currently dating. Well, how about we bring back this evil villain, and this evil villain raped her? And it's just like it's absolute insanity, and it just kept on going and going and going.
Or have him meet a woman at the mall who would have a pickle tattooed on their breast. I was just like, it was incredible. Chris Chan, and we'll end it with it, he was a troll's, unfortunately, dream come true, because you could pretty much mold him into whatever you wanted. And in the end, I always remember, I don't know if you guys know Blackbuster Critic, he followed Chris Chan for a very long time. And I remember him saying, I was saying it from the beginning too, as soon as I found out, but he was saying before I even really knew who Chris Chan was, this is going to end terribly. And it still ended worse than anybody could have ever imagined. I think the lesson that people could get from this is that just because someone's a lolcow doesn't mean that it's just fun. It could end really bad, and Chris Chan is a perfect example of that. When you make someone's real life become for your amusement. Now, Chris obviously had severe mental issues on top of the autism. But trolling can be a weapon. And this is probably the prime example of that. Now, is there always going to be a Chris Chan out there? No, Chris Chan was like the perfect troll target. He pretty much could be almost like, it's like having a remote control for a robot and moving them around. But it's still, Art just disappeared. It's still scary how much power trolling and manipulation can have, you know? And this is a prime example of it. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Isabella Janke too.
Yeah, I feel like we may have seen the last of her. I going to get a lot of new updates in her story, but it's possible. Who knows?
There has to be more about her. She was too heinous.
It seems like she's kind of successfully fled the internet.
For now.
I think my internet cut out for
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I want to see what happens with her. She's a really terrible person. If everything she said that was done was true, um, she's just as guilty as Chris Chan is with what happened.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, that's monstrous. I always remember there was that one girl. She basically coaxed her ex-boyfriend into committing suicide. You ever hear about that story? I forgot who the hell.
Oh yeah.
I wish I had a Jamie like from
Yes,
Joe Rogan
I
right
don't
now.
remember the details, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, she actually he was actually not going to commit suicide, and she was like, "No, you got this, Go back in there and you let that carbon monoxide come in." Like she said, "Go, don't be a coward," and he did, because of her words. And this almost seems like it's a similar situation where maybe there could be. I'm not a lawyer, where there could be similar repercussions to this, because essentially she enabled Chris Chan to do that. So I think there's some technical issues here, so it's probably a perfect time to end this stream.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for coming on. Thank you, Art. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate all of it, and thank you for all the hard work you did. And hopefully there is justice for Isabella Janke, too. I believe that's her name. If I said it wrong, I apologize.
Well, that's correct.
Yeah, because if everything is true, she's a very bad human being. Thank all of you for coming on. And make sure you go check out the documentary, and there may be some more interesting stuff in store when it comes to info about Chris. Have a good one, guys, and thank you, everyone, for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for